So before any other process you do in astrology, and before any horoscope you would do, first I'm giving an introduction into the field of astrology and explain a bit where it is coming from and where astrology is placed. So astrology is definitely not what you would say exact science of the modern day. It is more coming from the field of the esoteric occult sciences. So basically nowadays we have what we call the modern science, and the modern science which separates from the human spirits and is restricted to what can be proven in a laboratory by measurable means is something very new in humanity. It began in the Renaissance when science, so-called, was separated from religion and from the spiritual values of man. But actually, the Renaissance was not so long ago. It was around the 15th, 16th, 17th century. This is when these lines of thought began to happen. And basically, before that, any science that humanity had, whether it be astrology, medicine, alchemy, any type of study that was done, any type of doctrine was strongly entwined with faith and with the spirituality with a more holistic view. So even the science of the stars, which nowadays is astronomy, was not invented during the Renaissance. Like the astronomy level of studying the movements and trajectories of the celestial bodies without any connection with the human being is something very new. But human beings have been gazing to the stars, wondering what is this universe, what is the law of the universe, what is the connection between me and this vast universe since the dawn of time. And in all this, and this is why in all ancient civilizations before the Renaissance time, any study, any charting, any mapping of the stars and the celestial bodies in the heaven was done out of a philosophy and out of a science that was very much reflected in the human life. Like it was not separated in what it means about us. Yes, there are the planets and the sun and the moon out there in the constellations, and we don't study them only dryly, just like that. We study the interactions between them and humanity. And that has been done for thousands of years. So when we look at the lore of humanity concerning the planets, concerning the celestial bodies, we have thousands of years of studies which are esoteric and holistic that say there is a connection between the human being and what happens out there. And we have only few limited centuries of the modern astronomy which is like more dry, more scientific, and not really uh, into making a spiritual connection or an intimate connection between us here on Earth and the planets out there. And I'm saying this just to put you in proportion that when you think about Chinese medicine, about Indian yoga, Indian tantra, Vedic magic, Vedic astrology, these systems were not like primitive, retarded sciences. Like they are very deep, very profound sciences that are maybe not modern exact sciences, but they were like having great revelations, great success in directing human lives, and they are claimed in a way that is much more holistic and much more profound than what we have nowadays. And this is why it is very important that if to think like instead of being arrogant and to say yes, in the past people were retarded and now we are the smart new age people or the smart modern, more enlightened people, just to throw all the conclusions about the universe and about humanity from the old days just because now we have electricity and we can measure stuff in a laboratory. This is what we are being taught in school, that now we are the peak of human civilization and everything before the Renaissance was a bit primitive deity worship, lost dark ages cultures. But when you look at the philosophy, especially in a country like India and China, and even the ancient Egyptians, we see very rich, very flourishing, very advanced civilizations that maybe even had a much more holistic, much more you can say wholesome style of life that we have today. because one thing that modern people cannot brag about is that we have a very wholesome, complete, enjoyable lifestyle. So this is a bit introduction about this issue. Now when we tackle astrology as it is, let's begin to talk about the basic doctrines, the basic beliefs according to which astrology is built. So first of all, in all the ancient esoteric systems from the Oriental tradition, and not only, there are few basic rules that are a must. They are always present, and they are like the basic foundation upon which every holistic esoteric science is built. And the first big one is one that you know, having done the yoga course, but I'm telling this for the recording, what is called the law of correspondence and resonance. And that law simply says that there is a correspondence between the human being and everything else that is outside of the human being. In all ancient traditions, it was expressed in many ways. The one that is giving the most clear explanation would be the tantric Indian yogic tradition, which simply says that every human being is a miniature copy of the entire universe, which means that every human being is built exactly in the likeness of the same building blocks and according to the same rules as the universe. And then the claim in all these traditions is that everything that exists in the universe is analogically in some way latent or active to 100% or 0.0001% in the human being. And that simply says that everything is interconnected. In many traditions it is being expressed in various ways, but again the yoga of India, more than any other tradition, has explained it, that the human being contains within its being everything that could be found out there in the universe. That through internal introspection, through internal meditation, through energy with work, through work with energy, through the chakra system, a human being can experience any form of energy, every state of emotion, every state of mind that is available out there in the universe. And this is why there are many traditions that use different omens, different signs of nature, external processes of nature, and they reflect it upon the human being. In the astrology standpoint, we're looking at in which ways the human being is reflected in the movement of the celestial bodies in the solar system and outside of the solar system at the level of the galaxy and even beyond our own galaxy. And then the idea with all these traditions, with all the holistic traditions, especially the ones related to divination, like to use omens and signs, external signs, to understand stuff about the internal experience of the human being, the claim is that there is a correspondence between everything in the universe and everything else in the universe. This is the whole meaning of the word Tantra from India. The word Tantra means a warp or interconnectedness. It means that every single thing in the universe, when you stretch your mind enough and you look at it in the big picture, is just one line, one wire inside a big cloth. Ultimately, it is interconnected and affected by everything else. And then the only thing that we need to have is a system to see how things are corresponding to each other. Every holistic system that looks at the human being as a wholesome, holistic entity that is interconnected to the universe, the whole secret is to have a mapping and to understand what in the human being corresponds to what outside of him in the universe, and accordingly read the nature of these correspondences. What we inherit very widely from astrology is exactly this mapping about the stars and about the zodiac and the constellations. And therefore, astrology is a very well-defined esoteric science that explains exactly how the planets, the zodiac, and the constellations, and the
be too hard on yourself.
Yeah. So after defining a little bit what astrology is and what it deals with, I'm going to speak a little bit about the main basics of why astrology works and how astrology works. So in order to understand this, we need to define some rules which are valid in any esoteric tradition, whether it be Jewish Kabbalah, Christian esotericism, Sufism, tantric yoga from India, any form of esoteric science that goes into defining from a metaphysical standpoint the existence of the human being, they are bent on similar assumptions and similar mindsets. One of the most important claims out of this metaphysical truth is called the law of correspondence, and that law simply says that there is an analogous correspondence between the human being and the universe beyond the individual, saying that the whole universe is a macrocosm and the human being is a microcosm. And this macrocosm and microcosm are analogously similar, meaning that every human being as an individual is like a miniature universe, and even though it is miniature, which means limited in quantity, in quality and structure, it follows exactly the same rules of the macrocosm, which means that the human being as an individual is small and limited in space and time, whereas the cosmos is infinite, or at least infinitely big in space and time compared to the individual. And therefore any energy, any state of mind, any emotion, any quality that we can feel and perceive in our being, and even many qualities and phenomena that exist within us in a latent state that we cannot feel today, all of them exist endlessly and infinitely in the universe external to us. And from this claim, there comes the theory that the human being is intertwined with the universe, and there is the nature of correspondence and interdependentness between the human being and the external universe. Now, this is a general claim, but in order to make it practical and to make use of it, we need to begin to study and define the nature of these correspondences. And this is what many esoteric sciences, especially astrology, does. It is mapping and charting out for us exactly in which way, which aspects in the external universe corresponds to which aspects within the human being. And this is exactly the type of doctrines, theories, and philosophies and facts that we inherit in the astrological tradition. In astrology, we have the 12 major constellations expressing the 12 astrological signs, the 12 signs of the zodiac, and they represent everything external to the solar system, which means that around the solar system we have the Milky Way galaxy, and even beyond that, the entire universe. All that big sphere, which is all the universe, which is beyond the solar system, has been divided into 12 sections. Each one of them occupies 30 degrees of the heaven, because 360 degrees of a circle divided by 12 makes 30 degrees, and each one of these circles corresponds to one of the astrological signs. So you can say that in this language, each astrological sign actually represents the meaning, the energetical, subtle meaning and influence of 1/12 of a section of the entire universe outside of the solar system. And these 12 divisions of the whole universe correspond to 12 divisions of the human potential and the human soul. Like the human soul has an archetype of completeness, and that archetype and its complete archetype can be divided into 12 smaller archetypes, which together represent the perfect man, the complete man, the cosmic man, and each one of these 12 divisions, each one of the signs, is one of the direction in which the human soul needs to evolve in order to slowly attain to perfection. And then the universe, the 12 astrological signs in the universe that is, are simply a macrocosmic projection of that human potential at the level of the entire universe. So inside the human being, each human being has this path of evolving, slowly incorporating and learning the lessons attained by evolving through the 12 astrological signs, and those 12 signs of the human being are being projected as archetypes corresponding to 12 sections in the universe itself. Now, coming closer to the Earth, we have the second level of influence in astrology, which is the solar system itself. So we have the entire universe divided by 12, which is the zodiac, and then inside that big sphere, we have a smaller sphere, still way bigger than the Earth itself, which is the solar system. Inside the solar system, we have the Sun, the Moon, and other 5 traditional planets, and 3 modern planets which have been discovered by later astronomers. And these planets move around the Earth, and each one of these planets, again, through the science of astrology, has been ascribed to a specific aspect within the human psyche. Each planet governs or represents a force within the human being. For example, one planet would correspond to the personality, another planet would correspond to the emotions, another planet would correspond to your tests, another planet would correspond to your gifts. And in such a way, the qualities of the human being have been divided through the planets. And then the position of the planets within this space of the 12 astrological signs tells us about how the energies in each and every moment are. And then coming even closer, we have the position of the Earth itself, which is also not stationary. The Earth is moving around the Sun throughout the year, and that makes a subjective experience that the Sun is moving around us. So basically, the movement of the Sun through the astrological sign is actually an expression of the movement of the Earth around the Sun. And the Earth in one day is rotating around its own axis and complete like a survey through the whole astrological signs in one day, because each city in each moment of time is exactly beneath one section of the sky. And in 24 hours we go through the 12 signs, which means that every city on the Earth is passing in 2 hours each one of the astrological signs every day. And that changes the energies experienced in that city even in one day. So the summary and the interconnection and the interpretation of all these aspects together would be what astrologers read when they do a horoscope. And this is the way astrology works. But in order to understand things even more profoundly, there still remains the question of why this connection even exists. Because we can say that there is a connection between the constellations, the planets, and the Earth, and all these have a connection with each and every individual, and then it is just a question of defining what is what makes what, and how it works, and this is what astrology does. But I still haven't gone into the explanation of what of the principle that says that things should be so. In order to go into that explanation, we need to go into another metaphysical claim, which can sometimes be a bit hard to swallow for modern Westerners, and that is the claim that things in the universe are simply not accidental. Today there is the claim that the universe is chaotic. The universe does not have a trajectory, like there is no purpose to life. That theory, which is a bit cynical and sad, has been already contradicted in the law of any tradition on the planet Earth. You would find simply no esoteric tradition and no spiritual teaching that claims that life is meaningless and purposeless. In every esoteric tradition and in every spiritual teaching that you can see, there is always the claim that things happen with a reason. And there is a meaning to everything that is happening in the life of a human being and in the life of the entire universe. And taking that as an assumption, let's see what are the consequences of that. For example, now you are listening to this lecture. This lecture is happening in a certain space and in a certain time. And according to astrology, this is not a coincidence. It is not happening just like that. Maybe you didn't plan it, maybe you didn't predict it, maybe you didn't consciously choose to do this right now, but the fact that this event is taking place in a certain time and a certain place is not a coincidence. It is something that could have been seen, it is something that has been programmed in some level of the universe. Now, in another level, while this lecture is being given in space and time, at the level of the macrocosm, a certain planet in the solar system is also occupying a certain space, which means that as we are doing this lecture in this time and place, there would be a certain planet that in this time occupies some space in the heaven. And also the position of that planet where it is right now has a reason. Also where that planet is right now is not accidental and not coincidence, it has a meaning. And now, if we put these two claims together, one, everything has a meaning, and every two events separately have a meaning, and we combine it with the previous claim that everything is interconnected, so the two reasons for these two events that happen at the same time would also be connected to themselves. This phenomena is called synchronicity. A synchronicity is actually the opposite of a coincidence. A coincidence says that two things happen at the same time, and apparently there is no connection between them, it is just a coincidence. But a synchronicity says that if two things happen in the same time, because everything is interconnected, they would be also connected at the level of the purpose, at the level of the meaning, which means that it is actually impossible for two events to happen in the same time without having a connection between them. Like the universe is a gigantic clockwork machine that has a synchronicity between it. It's like your individual life is one wheel of the clock and the global life of your country is another wheel in the clock. And the movement of the planet Mars is another wheel of the clock, and the movement of the sun is another wheel, but the clock works perfectly well and perfectly in sync with each other. Like the universe in the big picture is a holistic, complete, harmonious picture in which everything is in place. All the wheels within the clockwork work perfectly with each other in synchronicity and synergy. And this is why the basic claim of astrology holds that because two events that happen at the same time has to be connected at the level of the reason why they happen, they can be used as a map and as a reading. This is why everything that happens in the universe has an influence upon you because of this phenomena of the synchronicities, and then it is only left to make the charting, to make the maps and define what piece of the clock influence what piece of the clock, which is you. And in astrology we are lucky enough that we don't have to reinvent the system. It has already been given to us from the tradition, which is time tested and time proven. And this is basically the presentation of what is astrology and what is the metaphysical basis into why it works and how it works. It is important to outline another few aspects. One of them is what astrology is meant for. So in the previous discourses, I explained a little bit in brief to which type of doctrine astrology belongs, and a bit about the basics, the metaphysical basics of how and why it works. And then the question is, for what it is meant to. So astrology is a very genius, very fascinating, esoteric spiritual science. And the purpose of astrology is, first of all, knowledge. Astrology is very good in giving people understanding, a very high quality information about themselves, about people, and about life, but it is a bit more scarce about giving methods. When you want to transform your life, there are many evolutionary systems that can give you techniques of evolution and transformation, such as techniques of meditation, techniques of self-improvement, techniques of yoga, etc., things that allow you to directly work upon yourself and achieve results. But any project you want to do, before you have the proper technique of how to do it well, you need first of all to have a very good definition of what you want to work upon and when would be a good time to work on that. You can say that any project in life without the proper intelligence would be a bit sloppy. In any project, whether it be construction, exploration, pioneering to a different country, any military strategy technique, they would all tell you that the first thing that decides the quality of the end and the result, like the end of the project, would be the quality of the intelligence you had. Because with whichever project you do, you decide what you're going to do and how you're going to do it and when you're going to do it according to a certain information. And it is known that when you have high quality information, like a creme of the creme, the state of the art intelligence, then you can make very well informed decisions. And everybody known in military, in business, in travel, in medicine, in any practical field that you can imagine in life, the better the information you have and the better you can make informed decisions, the more efficient you are and the better the results are. So astrology is fantastic in the department of high quality knowledge, because astrology is based on a very, very deep, very profound esoteric information about defining the 12 typologies of the human being according to the tendencies of the mind and the four elements, defining the connection between the planets and the psychological forces within the human being. Astrology is very well for this acquiring an objective, state-of-the-art information about what is the human being, what are the ingredients that compose the human being, and even more than that, about the processes that the human being is undergoing. So first of all, just as a curious philosopher, if you study astrology, you are going to study about the laws of karma, some things about the science of reincarnation and the process of reincarnation. You're going to learn about the three tendencies of the mind, about the laws of polarity, about the four classical elements as they manifest themselves at the level of the psychology, emotions, and the mind of the human being. And you're going to become, through astrology, an expert about human typologies, which would simply help you understand the archetypes of the human being, to understand therefore yourself better and other people around you better in a much more profound and meaningful way. So this is the first level in which astrology can help, of simply helping understand the ingredients out of which a person is made of, for general interest and general philosophical expansion of your understanding about what is the human psyche. On another level, astrology is a method for self-inquiry, which means that on every level where you approach life, you need to understand first of all yourself, your tendencies, and the way that you are reacting to other people and to events in life. And theoretically, coming from a spiritual standpoint, our gender our body, and our personality is not who we really are. The higher self, the Atman as it is being called in India, the supreme self, the Buddha nature in every human being is above space, above time, above gender, above causality, and is perfect and harmonious and cannot be expressed in words. It is the absolute. So from one standpoint, the highest answer to the question, who am I, is I am that which is beyond space and time, I am the absolute which is beyond causality, but the truth is that most human beings are not at the level of actualizing that spiritual truth in their daily life. And this is why on our path of evolution, on our path of realizing that higher self, we are using as a vehicle our lower self, which means that our lower self, our body conscience, our psyche, the emotions, and the mind, and our human tendencies are like our instrument, our vehicle on any path that we set on. And then, like in any trip that you take, it is not enough to know only the goal of the path, the end of the road. You need also to understand the road, to have a good map of the road, and also understand what is your vehicle. It would be very silly to go on a 10,000 kilometer road trip without knowing how to switch a tire in your car or not knowing what kind of fuel to give it. In the same way, our personality, our being, our psyche, our condition, our existential condition is like our donkey, like our vehicle on the road of evolution. And then to understand what kind of a vehicle we have, what it is good for, what is the challenges and obstacles of our vehicle, what are the needs of our vehicle, and also to understand the conditions of the road that we are going is essential for us to make a smooth, correct, well-informed choices about our path. This is exactly what astrology is meant to do. Astrology is meant to help a person to understand his typology, his qualities, his talents, his inhibitions, his challenges, and also his path, to understand what are the corrections he needs to do in this lifetime, and to understand uh, what evolutionary tests and what spiritual tests are being presented to him in various stages of life. Astrology is a system that is meant to provide information about this kind of thing, and what you can expect from astrology is an objective, esoteric interpretation and analysis of these facts in order to give you high quality, refined information which is coming from a very ancient and very well-made system which is aiming for a deeper understanding about what life is made of and what the human being is undergoing in life. Enough for this. Before we're going to continue with the actual reading, there is a short while which I want to relax a bit about the theory and just tell you a few words about the attitude which I recommend to approach astrology, which is the same attitude which is recommended to approach any reading and any advice given you in this field of occultism and esoteric teachings. First of all, be open-minded to see yourself in a new light. Astrology is working with archetypes and definitions which might be new to you, and it can always give you a fresh angle to evaluate your life. So the first attitude is to be open-minded and receptive to new ideas. The second attitude is to take everything with a pinch of salt. I am not the most professional, most mature astrologer you can meet in this world today, which means that I have my level of interpretation and my level of understanding, which are the way they are today, and they can give you insight, and I hope they will give you a lot of beneficial, spiritual, enlightening insight about the ups and downs of your life, but not all the readings I'm doing are correct. Also, sometimes, especially in reading, certain aspects can be interpreted in numerous levels. Usually when I'm doing a reading and the person is there, so I'm telling this, I'm like looking at an aspect and I'm saying, see, this aspect can say this and this and this about you, and if it doesn't, please tell me it doesn't, because then we need to investigate it deeper. This is one of the things that I will not be able to do with you. I'm just going to suggest the things that are coming up to my mind, and if certain things seem that they don't fit your life at all, there are few options. Either I'm right and you're just procrastinating and you're not fully aware of that aspect in your life and you need to look at it deeper to do some inquiry and ask yourself, is this really so? Or can I actually see some aspects of my life like that? This is one possibility. Another possibility, of course, is that I'm mistaken, and then we need to investigate that aspect more and see where things are coming from. And this is something which we will not be able to do because we are not here and we cannot discuss these things. And therefore, I hope that these things would work. But anyway, also when the thing I'm saying is correct and not correct, I hope that you have the I wouldn't say skeptical, but like I would say sober attitude of not becoming hysterical about certain stuff, in the meaning that astrology is stating the fact that some aspects in your life are pleasant and some less. And this is, I guess, not new to you at all. And then if in astrology I'm seeing or noting that this is a negative aspect, it does not mean that it is negative for your evolution, it is negative in the meaning that it is unpleasant for your ego. It means that there is a correction your soul needs to do, and it has to learn it this time the hard way. And because it is the hard way, this aspect is challenging you and making you feel unpleasant. And then the idea is that if you're going to stay the way you are, you're going to keep suffering. And when you get the point, you transform, you evolve, and then you don't suffer in that way anymore. Some aspects in astrology are meant to evolve you by giving you nice, pleasant things, and some things meant to do it the other way around, just like life is. Because as you know, you have evolved in life, sometimes through challenges and through obstacles that made you transform the hard way, and there were some evolutions and openings in your life which was like completely beautifully, pleasantly flowing. So the fact that there are harmonious and disharmonious aspects in astrology is perfectly reflected in the human life. And then the idea is to look at it in this sober way of this is just a reflection of the way life is, and this is like a mirror for me to see where in astrology my ups and downs are coming from and what can be done about that. Um, Also, I mean to take it with a pinch of salt, in the meaning that I want you to take from it whatever is working for you, whatever makes sense for you, and I hope that you will not become too fanatical to negate what I'm saying or to embrace it and never let it go, in the meaning that be open-minded about everything, try to hear in what I'm saying to you that which sounds significant and correct for you, both for good and for bad, and do something correct about it. The third and most important thing I want to tell you is that the attitude towards an astrology reading is should be a positive and active attitude. Positive in the meaning that you understand that everything is for the best, and if there is a struggle in your life, if the astrology is showing us that there is a certain difficult angle in your horoscope, it means that you are ripe to go through that into a brighter future. The universe and your karma would not summon this test if you were not supposed to go through it and if you were not deserving to go through it. And that just means that whether the things I'm talking about are pleasant for you or not, they should be there because you deserve it and because your evolution requires it, no matter how unpleasant they might be. Just like you can look around you and see that there are human beings that have really utterly terrible life with a lot of poverty disease, insanity, mental illness, violence, and whatever. There are people that have a very unpleasant life. And in the view of astrology and yoga, these people have accumulated negative karma and they have to pay it that way right now. This is the best way for them to evolve, by consuming some negativities they have written for themselves. Like the Bible says, as you reap, so you shall sow. If you created violence and suffering in other people's life, so in one of your next life, or even in this life, this is going to come back to you, so that you would learn the lesson of being an harmonious being. So I'm saying this again, not to react negatively and hysterically. I'm saying, oh my god, astrology says that I'm screwed. Astrology is not here to tell you that you're screwed, because let's be honest, you know pretty well what makes you suffer in your life, and a lot of the things that I'm going to tell you is not going to be necessarily new to you, because we are very much aware of what makes us suffer in this life. And then the positive attitude is to understand that this is for your best and that there is a lesson to be learned. But the positive and active attitude means that you don't have to learn the hard way. Astrology, not only that it is not a stone carved destiny, it does change, it can change, and actually it should be changed. Because in all the spiritual doctrines, we spoke about evolution, right? We spoke about the fact that the human being is supposed to evolve towards a state of harmony, perfection, a state of happiness. And then the idea is that astrology makes us evolve automatically, in the meaning that all the people that are not deliberately and consciously try to evolve by practicing some bona fide, well-trodden path of spirituality, they still evolve, but they evolve slower, and what makes them evolve is the different events that happen in their life, and those events are governed by astrology. And that means that astrology is like that matrix, that reflection of the karma that makes us evolve all the time anyway, but that way of evolving is first of all passive, not active, and very, very slow. And both spirituality and astrology is meant to evolve you toward transcending your astrological state and stop being associated with your body, emotions, and mind and condition, and become associated with your higher self. So the difference, so astrology, karma, evolution, the regular evolution of human beings, and spiritual evolution are aiming towards the same goal. Only the difference is that when you live ignorantly, astrology makes you evolve anyway, but very slowly. And when you practice spirituality, it makes you evolve deliberately, consciously, and way, way, way more fast. So in the eyes of yoga and spirituality, we would say not only that you can evolve and change and transcend your astrology, you actually should do it as fast as possible. Because if a certain aspect in your astrology says that you shall suffer all your life in a certain way until you learn the point, if I'm telling you now, look, this is the problem and you're supposed to learn this lesson, why learn it tediously and repeatedly all your life, and not to say, I know this is my problem and I'm going to tackle it and I'm going to work on it deliberately 1, 2, 3 years, concentratedly, whatever it takes, and solve this issue for life. Because the idea is that astrology is a tendency that is pushing you to a certain direction. And if that tendency is unpleasant, you are going to be passively and automatically pushed into unpleasant directions. And the potential to go there would always be there, but you can consciously and deliberately conquer that urge, conquer that pattern in your personality, and utterly transform it. And then that karma, that astrological aspect that you have to suffer in a certain way, is transcended by remaining a latent potential that this is the way you used to be, but you learned how to be different in a way that is much more beneficial and constructive for you and others. And this is the biggest thing I want you to consider when we're going to astrology, is always to consider that both the positive stuff and the negative stuff are meant to be dealt with in such a way to make you transcend any state of suffering and evolve towards harmony, happiness, and ultimately realization of your spiritual nature. And like I said, astrology is informative. Astrology is not a technique. Astrology cannot tell you what to do. That is what you do in meditation, in prayer, in yoga. The kind of yoga that I'm instructed with is a wonderful tool to work on different aspects of your personality, and there are all kind of techniques to work on the planet and astrology, and this is for you to investigate. And anyway, when it comes to deliberately transforming your life and trying to practice to change patterns in your personality, this takes always time, effort, and the proper instruction. And astrology is just informative. This is why I told you that astrology is not a path for evolution, it is a guide. It is something that shows you who you are, what you might be, what is the good and negative potentials that your horoscope is giving you, and then it is up to you to utilize this information in a constructive way in your life. And for that, I would recommend you to find the correct schools, to find the correct teachers, and I would wish you a lot of good luck on your path and on your endeavor, if you so choose, to try and improve your condition towards a better state of harmony and spiritual fulfillment, which after all, we're all seeking to reach there one day. With this, we have concluded this long introduction, which I hope has been fruitful for you. And from now on, I'm going to, in the next recordings, to go into the practicalities of analyzing your horoscope and start talking about you and about what your horoscope is telling me about your life.